king's mighty. And it seems a lot of times God speaks through me through times where we read the Bible with Sammy every night. Every single night without fail, Shelly will at least read a chapter or a few to Sammy while she's nursing them, getting them ready for bed. And when I can, I join in. If I'm home from work or if I have the time, whatever it is, I'd love to be able to join in. And it just seems like God likes to speak through me at that time, which is awesome. Because I'm reading my son the Bible, or Shelly's reading them, and I don't know, it's just different sometimes. I see something like I never saw before, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And so a couple weeks ago, we were reading about David's mighty men. And I've read it so many times, but I was just so shocked by these men. I was shocked by the kind of men they were. I was shocked by what they did. But I was even more shocked at their complete devotion to David. They were shocked at their devotion to their king. And their records, the Bible talks about what they've done, what they accomplished, which if you read them and you really take them in, they're going to leave you astounded. These were men of war. Their entire lives were devoted and dedicated to training and being a full-time soldier. These were essentially the special forces of the Israelites. The one thing that just stuck out so much to me reading this was the fearlessness of these men. Their ability to take lives, and it didn't matter how many people were against them. It didn't matter how many people they were up against. They were never scared. I'm sure there are so many stories about them that we won't hear this out of heaven, and so many things that happened that we'll never hear about. But needless to say, these were men that were feared and respected among their peers. Men that people admired and probably aspired to be like. Yeah. And they were men that King David trusted with his life. King David, thank you, Steve. King David had 100% trust in them. They went by some different names. They went by the Mighty Men. They went by the 30. And my favorite, they were also called David's Champions. Obviously, the correlation I'm going to make in the sermon is about us being able to do the same, but in our spiritual lives. In our walk with God, and how it translates to us and what it means to us and the application to our lives, especially in spiritual warfare. So the first question always comes out is, who were the mighty men? Who were they? If you want to turn to 2 Samuel chapter 23, we're going to read two good portions of Scripture. Steve, would you mind reading for me the first portion?
How far?
We're going to go from chapter 23, verse 8 to verse 23.
Verse 8. These be the names of the mighty men whom David had. Oh, thank you. the Tachelmite that sat in the seat, the chief among the captains. The same was Adonai, the Ezanite. He lifted up his spear against 800, whom he slew at one time. And after him was Eleazar, the son of Dudo, the Ahohite of the three mighty men with David when they defied the Philistines that were there gathered together to battle, and the men of Israel were gone away. He arose and smote the Philistines until his hand was weary, and his hand clung to the sword. And the Lord wrought a great victory that day, and the people returned after him only to spoil. And after him was Shammah, the son of Agi, the Hararite, and the Philistines were gathered together into a troop, where was a piece of ground full of lentils, and the people fled from the Philistines. How far do you want me to go?
Verse 23.
But he stood in the midst of the ground and defended it, and slew the Philistines, and the Lord wrought a great victory. And three of the mighty chief went down and came to David in the harvest time to the cave of Adullam, and the troop of the Philistines pitched in the valley of Rephaim. And David was then in a hold, and the garrison of the Philistines was then in Bethlehem. And David longed and said, "Oh, that one would give me drink of the water of the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate." And the three mighty men broke through the host of the Philistines, and drew water out of the well of Bethlehem, that was by the gate, and took it, and brought it to David. Nevertheless, he would not drink thereof, but poured it out to the Lord. And he said, "Be it far from me, O Lord, that I should do this. Is not this the blood of the men that went in jeopardy of their lives?" Therefore, he would not drink it. These things did these three mighty men. And Abishai, the brother of Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was chief among three. And he lifted up his spear against the 300 and slew them, and had the name among the three. Was he not most honorable of the three? Therefore he was their captain. However, he attained not to the first three. And Benaniah, the son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man of Kabazeel, and had done many acts. He slew 2 lion-like men of Moab. He went down also and slew a lion in the midst of a pit in time of snow. And he slew an Egyptian, a goodly man. And the Egyptian had a spear in his hand, but he went down to him with a staff, and plucked the spear out of the Egyptian's hand, and slew him with his own spear. These things did Benaniah, the son of Jehoiada, and had the name among the three mighty men. He was more honorable than the 30, but he attained not to the first three, and David set him over his guard.
All right, one more portion of scripture. This will be in 1 Chronicles 12. Sophia wants to read this.
Okay.
From verse 1 to verse 40. We're going to read just about the entire chapter.
Okay. Now these are they that came to David to Ziklag, while he yet kept himself close because of Saul the son of Kish. And they were among the mighty men, helpers of the war. They were armed with bows and could use both the right hand and the left in hurling stones and shooting arrows out of a bow, even of Saul's brethren of Benjamin. The chief was Ahiezer, then Joash the sons of Shemaiah the Gibeathite, and Jezael and Pelet the son of Asmaveth, and Barakah and Jehu the Antothite, and Ismael the Gibeonite, a mighty man among the 30 and over the 30, and Jeremiah and Jahaziel and Johanan and Josabed the Gederathite, Eluzai and Jeremoth and Beliah and Shemariah and Shaphatiah and Haruphite, Elkanah and Jesiah and Azareel and Joezer and Jashobam the Korhites, and Jola and Zebediah the sons of Jeroham the Geder. And the Gadites were separated themselves unto David into the hold unto the wilderness, men of might and men of war fit for the battle, that could handle shield and buckler, whose faces were like the faces of lions, and were as swift as the roes upon the mountains. Ezra the first, Obadiah the second, Eliab the third, Mishmana the fourth, Jeremiah the fifth, Attai the sixth, Eliel the seventh, Johanan the eighth, Elzabad the ninth, Jeremiah the 10th, Machbani the 11th. These were the sons of Gad, captains of the host. One of the least was over 100, and the greatest over 1,000. These are they that went over Jordan in the first month, when it had overflown all his banks, and they put to flight all them of the valleys, both toward the east and toward the west. And there came to the children of Benjamin and Judah to the hold unto David. And David went out to meet them, and answered and said unto them, If ye be come peaceably unto me to help me, mine heart shall be knit unto you. But if ye be come to betray me to mine enemies, seeing there is no wrong in my hands, the God of our fathers look thereon and rebuke it. Then the Spirit came upon Amasai, who was chief of the captains, and he said, Thine are we, David, and on thy side, thou son of Jesse. Peace, peace be unto thee, and peace be to thine helpers, for thy God helpeth thee. Then David received them and made them captains of the band. And there fell some of Manasseh to David, when he came with the Philistines against Saul to battle. But they helped them not, for the lords of the Philistines upon advisement sent him away, saying, He will fall to his master Saul to the jeopardy of our heads. As he went to Ziklag, there fell to him Manasseh, Adnah, and Jozabad, and Jediel, and Michael, and Jozabad, and Elihu, and Zilthai, captains of the thousands that were of Manasseh. And they helped David against the band of the rovers, for they were all mighty men of valor, and were captains in the host. For at that time, day by day, there came to David to help him, until it was a great host, like the host of God. And these are the numbers of the bands that were ready armed to the war, and came to David to Hebron to turn the kingdom of Saul to him, according to the word of the Lord. The children of Judah that bare shield and spear were 6,800, ready armed to the war. Of the children of Simeon, mighty men of valor for the war, 7,100. Of the children of Levi, 4,600. And Jehoiada was the leader of the Aaronites, and with him were 3,700. And Zadok, a young man, mighty of valor, and of his father's house 22 captains. And of the children of Benjamin, the kindred of Saul, 3,000, for hitherto the greatest part of them had kept the ward of the house of Saul. And of the children of Ephraim, 20,800, mighty men of valor, famous throughout the house of their fathers. And of the half tribe of Manasseh, 18,000, which were expressed by name, to come and make David king. And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do, the heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandment. Of Zebulun, such as went forth to battle, expert in war, with all instruments of war, 50,000, which could keep rank. They were not of double heart. And of Naphtali, 1,000 captains, and with them with shield and spear 37,000. And of the Danites, expert in war, 28,600. And of Asher, such as went forth to battle, expert in war, 40,000. And on the other side of Jordan, of the Reubenites and the Gadites, and of the half tribe of Manasseh, with all manner of instruments of war for the battle, 120,000. All these men of war that could keep rank came with a perfect heart to Hebron to make David king over all Israel. And all the rest also of Israel were of one heart to make David king. And there they were with David 3 days, eating and drinking, for their brethren had prepared for them. Moreover, they that were nigh them, even unto Issachar and Zebulun and Naphtali, brought bread on asses, and on camels, and on mules, and on oxen, and meat, meal, cakes of figs, and bunches of raisin, and wine, and oil, and oxen, and sheep abundantly, for there was joy in Israel.
Thanks, Sophia. So there's a lot. There's so much there to go through. We're not going to get through everything, but it's important that we look at everything and we read everything, because we're going to kind of jump through it. But it's so important just to, it goes from the 30 to all these men that joined David. And it's so important to understand, because you see how much people love David. And so you think about these men, you think about the 30. the main people, the ones you read about, like, man, these men were warriors. These men were fighters. They did everything they needed to do. And you ask a lot of times, like, what is their goal in life, and how does that relate to us? Like, how can we draw a comparison from them, these men of war, to us? And like I said earlier, these men were full-time soldiers. They trained, and their life purpose was to serve the king.
Amen.
They were set on doing whatever they were commanded without question, because they were in total submission to the king. And they knew it was their job to lay their life down for the king. They were doing whatever David had called them to do, whatever David wanted them to do. And they weren't going to go against it. They weren't going to fight against it. They weren't even going to question him. They said, this is our king. This is the man we have decided to lay our life down for and serve, and we're going to do whatever it is he calls us to do. And if you go back and read, them following and serving the king was a delight to them.
Yes.
Because of the love they had for him. And verse 16, and I'm sorry, this is in the portion Sophia just read. I'm reading out the ESV. At verse 16 it says, and some of the men of Benjamin and Judah came to the stronghold of David. And David went out to meet them and said to them, if you have come to me in friendship to help me, my heart will be joined to you. But if you betray me to my adversaries, although there is no wrong in my hands, then may the God of our fathers see and rebuke you. Then the Spirit clothed Amasai, chief of the 30, and he said, we are yours, O David, and with you, O son of Jesse. Peace, peace to you, and peace to you and your helpers, for your God helps you. As he went to Ziklag, these men of Manasseh deserted to him. Adnah, Jozabad, Jedediah, sorry, I can't read them right, Michael, Jozabad, Elihu, Zelothai, and chiefs of thousands in Manasseh. They helped David against the band of raiders, for they were all mighty men of valor, and were commanders in the army. For from day to day men came to David to help him, until there was a great army like the army of God. And this is what really struck me. And when it talks about the Benjamites, it says of the Benjamites, the kinsmen of Saul, 3,000 of whom the majority had point to kept their allegiance to the house of Saul. And so these were men that had a previous allegiance to Saul, the king that the people chose. Saul was the king that the people wanted, that the people chose, and these people were from his own tribe. These people had an allegiance to him. But they found out Saul for the counterfeit that he was. And they wanted to go with the anointed king. The king that God had always wanted. That's who they wanted to choose. That's who they wanted to serve and who they wanted to follow. And if you go to verse 38, it says, all of these men of war arrayed in battle order came to Hebron with a whole heart to make David king over all Israel. And likewise, all the rest of Israel were of a single mind to make David king. They were there with David for 3 days, eating and drinking, for their brothers had made preparation for them. And also their relatives from as far as Issachar and Zebulun and Naphtali came bringing food on donkeys and camels and mules and oxen. Abundant provisions of flours, cakes and figs, clusters of raisins, wine and oil, oxen and sheep, for there was joy in Israel. And you can see what God was doing. I'm sure at this point, David could have been struggling in doubt. I mean, all of us do. Especially when things are just piling up against us. We just seem like we're helpless in a point. We just seem like we're coming down. We have nothing to help us. And so I'm almost guaranteeing David was at this part. And I can only imagine what was going on in David's mind, realizing what God was doing. But providing all these men were coming to his aid. All these men were coming to his side. All these men were coming to serve him. And it was more than David could ever imagine. If you go back to what Sophia listed, it's just thousands upon thousands of men. These men had such a love for David that they were willing to leave everything that they had. They were willing to leave their reputation, their status, their wealth, because they found a righteous king.
Amen.
They found a king that they wanted to serve. They found a king that in a sense represented them. A king that was different, someone that loved them, someone that cared for them, instead of someone that just wanted for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how it is with Jesus when we realize he is infinitely better than the king we served before. The king that is the devil, the king that is us.
Mm-hmm.
We find out Jesus is infinitely better than that. And every born-again Christian should be like these men who are willing to leave it all behind for David. We should be willing to leave it all behind, no matter the cost, and conform ourselves to Jesus. I mean, if you go back, some of these men, they were commanders of thousands of people in the armies. These were high-ranking men in different armies. They were high-ranking men, and they were willing to leave it all. They were willing to be called a traitor. They were willing to be called a deserter, to have their reputation ruined because they wanted to follow David and not Saul. Because they wanted to follow the righteous and not the unrighteous. And I meet so many people that, so many Christians are testimonies of this. They leave, whether they leave drugs, whether they leave a lifestyle that's wrong but made them lots of money. They're willing to do it because they find something so great that they're willing to give their life to it. In Jesus. And we don't come to Jesus and do what we want. These men didn't come to David and say, look, this is David, this is what we're going to do. This is the way we're going to fight. This is the way we're going to help you. This is the way these are the way things should be done. These men came to David and said, we have a heart for you. We want to serve you. We have a single purpose in our mind that we want to serve with you and lay down our lives for you. And when we come to Jesus, we don't do what we want. We don't come to Jesus and say, hey, you're my God now, but I'm going to do what I want still, and this is just the way this is going to be. We're going to have a relationship, but I'm going to go and do what I want. We have to lay down our life for the lordship of God.
Amen.
Meaning that whatever he says is final in our lives.
Amen.
And we should be constantly letting the Bible speak to us. I have to remind myself to do this over and over and over and over again. One thing God's really been working with me on a lot lately is not speaking evil of anyone. And it can come as a challenge because it's so easy for me to criticize people. It's so easy for me to criticize false Christianity. I criticize Christians or regular people that, you know, they're just sinners. What do you expect? They're sinning. And I still criticize them, but God's really been working on me not speaking evil of anyone.
Amen.
Keeping my mouth shut, which is something I need to do a lot more. But it's just been agonizing because it's like every single time I start to say something, God like pricks me in the heart. And so it's just, but this is the way it's supposed to be as a Christian. He's supposed to constantly be challenging us and conforming us to his image.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
And as being a Christian, we're part of God's army now. And we have to advance against the kingdom of darkness. We're not just standing back being bystanders. We can't stand back and just kind of do our own thing. Like, okay, I'll go join whenever I want. I'll kind of go do it whenever I feel like I need to, when I feel like I can. It's 100% complete devotion.
Amen.
Every minute of the day.
That's right.
These men, they fully knew what they were doing. They fully knew kind of what was going to come against them. I mean, everyone always wanted to go kind of against Israel. They wanted to go against David. I mean, Saul was chasing David. They left him to go with David. And to a man that was constantly had to run from Saul, but there was something different. They knew he was a man of
Amen.
God. And to us, especially today as Christians, I mean, we see constantly the world's kind of just, everyone's looking for a reason to go after Christianity, no matter who it is. I know this past week, especially during the flood in Houston, a lot of people were criticizing Joel Osteen because they said, I don't know the true story. They said he wasn't opening his church. There's photos of it being submerged in water. But the thing someone really pointed out was like, it doesn't matter if he teaches a false gospel. It doesn't matter if he teaches the right gospel. People are going after him because he's labeled as a Christian pastor. And people are so obsessed with going after Christian, discrediting God, that they're going to go after whoever it takes. But one thing, the superintendent I work with, his name's Ted. He's like the 6'5" guy. He's a big burly kind of guy, and he's one of the biggest softies in the world. But he's really intense a lot too. But some of the best advice he's ever given me, and I tell myself this over and over and over and over. He says, Omar, you have to be proactive. You have to be proactive in everything, especially in your job, because once you're reactive, you're toast. Once you're reactive, you're done. And as Christians, I feel like a lot of times, including myself, we're reactive. We kind of mostly just kind of say, we do our thing, we go to church, and then when something happens, like we figure out a way to defend ourselves. We figure out kind of a way to keep the attack down. But as Christians, we need to be proactive. We need to go after sinners to bring them to Christ, not just to wait till, oh, maybe they'll talk to me about God, maybe they'll raise a question. But we need to be proactive in our faith with God as well. In our walk with God, we need to be proactive about making sure we set out that time every single day. Amen. About serving God, about doing what it is, whatever we need to do to serve God, whatever He is calling us to do. And I think that's a big part of what the church needs, just to be proactive. We need to be proactive in our prayer life. The way we pray for family, for lost family, for other Christians as well. And even though we can't all be in full-time ministry, when I was writing this, I was like, well, God, is this just for the people that are in full-time ministry? He's like, you're always in full-time ministry.
That's right. Amen.
You're always full-time with me. And just because we have jobs, it doesn't mean we can't make an impact. It doesn't mean our impact will be less. We can all pray while we work. We can pray while we're driving to work. I have an hour to drive to work every single day. An hour there, an hour back. And we can talk to Jesus the whole time while we're working, and we can talk to people about Jesus while we're working. Every time I talk to someone, I'm always looking for a place to easily talk about God. And my favorite thing to do is always say, hey, I'm from Alabama. I just moved here from Alabama. They're like, what are you doing here? Why did you move? What would possess you to move here? And it always leaves an open door. And so there's always ministry. I remember at school, I preached a sermon in our homiletics class, and I was talking about, I was like, everyone needs Jesus. Every single work, not everyone's going to be in full-time ministry. People in construction need Jesus. People in garbage business need Jesus. And I was like, at that time, I was like, I never want to work construction ever again in my life. And little did I know, I had to eat my own words. But God's been so good to me. But it just brings, I meet people from down south, from different states that come to do jobs for us, and there's no way I would have ever met them. There's no way I could ever talk to these people about God. And people from, we work a lot with Walmart. And the first job I had, there's one guy, he has family that are Christians, but he's never really believed in God. But every once in a while, I prayed for him because he has a lot of health issues and different things. And one of the really things that's cool, he's like, I just feel like I was meant to work here because I was supposed to meet you. Mm-hmm. And to me, I was like, wow. Man, working nights is terrible sometimes, but it's so worth it to have conversations like this. There's one guy from Southern California that works for Walmart, and he's more of their management type people. But I was walking by the DVD case, and it was the first day that Case for Christ came out, and me and him were walking, talking. I was like, oh, this movie's out. He's like, what's it about? And I gave him a rundown of what it's about. He's like, oh, I'm going to watch it. And he says he doesn't believe in God, and so he said he's going to watch it. I'm like, man, it's just so cool. Mm-hmm. It's a great movie for evangelism, and it just we just always have to be ready to speak. In season, out of season, when we feel good, when we don't feel good, we have to be ready to speak. But we're not going to have a word unless we're being proactive in our faith with God. Unless our relationship with God is flowing, we're not going to have a word with power. We're not going to be able to speak with the unction to people. And we have to know that we want people to see God in us and not us. Amen. Not just another person that says they believe in God. You can meet so many people that believe in God, but their actions and their words say completely different. And our every action and intentions of our heart need to be dedicated to God. Every single one of us can be counted among the mighty for God. It's not just a select few. It's not just every other person. The person that has it all together, the person that is a pastor or whatever it may be. It's every single one of us. We can have as much of God as we want. And so with these soldiers, these people were trainers. These people, they have the ability to train every single day of their lives, and that's all they did. And some of us have a lot more time during our days than others. Lately, I've been working 12-hour days on a consistent basis, and I drive home. I got stuff to do when I get home, and I get maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes to read the Bible, if that. But one of the great things that Pastor Carter Collins said was, it doesn't matter if you have 2 hours or 10 minutes. God can fill that time.
Amen.
God can do what he needs to do in the shortest amount of time or longest amount of time. But you have to be giving them what you want, what you can give them. It's not just well, I have all the time, but I'll give you 10 minutes kind of thing. God doesn't need 2 hours to speak to us. He needs just a second. And a big thing about these men was their love for David. It was so easy for them to serve David because they loved him. If you go to 2 Samuel 23, and I'll start in verse 3. And it says, And the 3 of the 30 chief men went down and came about harvest time to David at the cave of Adullam, when a band of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. And David was then in the stronghold, and the garrison of the Philistines was then at Bethlehem. And David said longingly, Oh, that someone would give me water to drink from the well of Bethlehem, that is by the gate. Then the 3 men broke through the camp of the Philistines and drew water out of the well of Bethlehem, that was by the gate, and carried it back to David. So David was longing for some water, obviously, from Bethlehem. I'm guessing he was extremely thirsty, extremely exhausted, probably dehydrated. And it wasn't anything that's going to quite satisfy him the way that water did. And he didn't ask anyone to go. All he did was he kind of said it out loud, oh man, I wish I could have this. And how many of us at times like, man, I wish I could have this right now? Or I'll be with Philip and I'll be like, man, I wish I could have a Pepsi right now. Or whatever it may be. But it's just a mention that he said, man, it just sounds so good right now. I wish I could have it. And it wasn't even a question in these guys' mind. That all they had to hear was a desire of his heart. That's all it took for them to act. That's all it took for them to take action. They didn't ask David for permission. All that was part of going through their mind was, our king is thirsty, let's go get him some water. And from everything I've read and kind of looked at, you would be able to see the people, you'd be able to see the camp of the Philistines from the cave that they were at. So I'm sure they knew what they were up against. I'm sure they knew exactly what they were going to face and what they were going to come against. I mean, this army had complete control. It was 3 men, and all they wanted to do was like, let's go get our king water. This is the desire of his heart, let's go do it. So these men were willing to break through the camp of the enemy to fetch some water. These men had no regard for their life because they knew their life belonged to someone else. And a lot of times God may ask us to do something that doesn't seem logical to anyone else, not even us. But if we know it's God, then we have to follow God. When we stop obeying and doing only the things that we want to that make sense to us, then that's when backsliding begins. I know there's some couple things God's asking us to do right now that, to me and Shelly, that may not seem logical to others, or even myself sometimes, but neither was moving to Alabama. I moved to Alabama without any money, without a car, without a job, after school. And within a week, money was provided for me, a car was provided for me. I didn't have to do anything. It took a while to get a job, but God gave me enough money to last me those months that I didn't have a job. It wasn't logical to do what I did. And it definitely wasn't logical for me to move my family here to California without a job or a lot of money, without a place to stay, when I made the decision that we were leaving. A lot of people no one would do that. Everyone said, you have to have a plan, you have to have a plan. If you don't, your plan is going to fail. And while, yes, it's good a plan, don't get me wrong, but I just knew what God told me to do and I had to follow that. And I have obeyed God and followed God where He's led me to go. And I've always seen the glory of God when I followed Him. When I've obeyed Him, I've always seen His glory. I've seen God's provision, I've experienced His peace, and I've experienced a relationship in a sense, and just being able to wow, God really did that for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, for me to just say, hey, I'm moving, this is the decision we're going to do. And obviously it wasn't just on a whim. We prayed for a long time about it. And we talked with people that we trusted. And no one really raised any concerns. But to follow Him and in a few days before we leave, find out there's a possibility for a job. And I say, oh man, that would be awesome. When I'm driving through New Mexico, I get a call saying, hey, we want you to come in so we can interview you. And they get here on Tuesday, and the next Monday having a job. Like, a job that I definitely don't deserve, because they were looking with someone for 7 years of experience for the title they were looking for, and I had none.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's still so amazing to me.
That's when you know it's God.
Yep. But we're only going to see that when we obey God.
That's right.
We're only going to see Him when we listen to Him.
Amen.
I mean, our lives were not made for ourselves, and they weren't made to do what we wanted to do. And if that's the way you live, it's going to be worth nothing at the end.
Mm.
You will take nothing into eternity with you. I've been listening to it's a new Christian rhapsody that came out by this guy named Shylin. It's called Still Jesus. And it's been incredible, because every single song is just filled with Jesus. It's filled with the Spirit. It's filled with life. I may not agree with this man on all his theological points, but the CD is so anointed. It's incredible. And there's one line that always sticks out to me every time I listen to the CD. He says, I want to do works that outlive me. I want to do things that aren't going to go to the grave with me. I want to do things that are going to outlast me. And I refuse to be someone that ends up in heaven by the skin of my teeth and my clothes smelling like fire. I don't want to show up empty-handed and without anything to show with what God's done for me, what God's entrusted me with. I don't want to be that type of Christian. I don't want to have that type of life. There's so many people that they go to church to do, they do everything. They read the Bible and they just go to church and they kind of just do what they want to do. They have their 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan, whatever it is. They don't really allow God to move them. And there's nothing wrong with having plans, like I said, but when you don't allow God to change your heart, and you don't allow God to do what He wants to do, we're going to end up bankrupt. So it's so important just to be in complete submission to God, like these men were in complete submission to David. Another trait I love about these guys were they had each other's back. They cared for one another, and they watched out for, they fought for one another. It's First Chronicles 19, verse 1 through 15. It says, Now after this, Nahash, the king of the Ammonites, died, and his son reigned in his place. And David said, I will deal kindly with Hanun, the son of Nahash, for his father dealt kindly with me. So David sent messengers to console him concerning his father. And David's servant came to the land of the Ammonites to Hanun to console him. But the princes of the Ammonites said to Hanun, Do you think because David has sent comforters to you that he is honoring your father? Have not his servants come to you to search and overthrow you to spy out the land? So Hanun took David's servants and shaved them and cut off their garments in the middle, at their hip, and sent them away. And they departed. When David was told concerning the men, he sent messengers to meet them, for the men were greatly ashamed. Then the king said, Remain at Jericho until your beards have grown, and then return. And when the Ammonites saw that they had become a stench to David, Hanun and the Ammonites sent 1,000 talents of silver to hire chariots and horsemen from the Mesopotamia, from Aram, Maacah, and from Zobah. And they hired 32,000 chariots, and the king of Maacah with his army, who came and encamped before Medeba. And the Ammonites were mustered from their cities and came to battle. So these are thousands and thousands of men that are coming to battle with King David. And this is what I love. And when David heard of it, he sent Joab and the army of the mighty men. And the Ammonites came out to draw up in battle array at the entrance of the city, and the kings who had come by themselves were in open country. And something I love is these thousands of men are coming. David's like, all right, send the mighty men. Send a few guys out there. Send this army because I can trust them with my life.
Amen.
Send these guys because I trust every single thing about them, because I know what they're capable of. If you go back, it says the least of them was worth more than 100 men. And the greatest of them was worth more than 1,000 men. And so this was like nothing to David. He's like, all right, go take care of these guys. Go take care of this because I trust you guys with this. I don't doubt that you can accomplish what I want you to accomplish. And if you go down to verse 10, the next verse, it says, When Joab saw that the battle was set against them both in front and in the rear, he chose some of the best men of Israel and arrayed them against the Syrians. And so at this point, they're there, and they got people in front of them and behind them, ready to kill them, ready to fight against them. And so, in essence, right here, he's about to split up with his brother. He says, so he took the best men of Israel and arrayed them against Syrians, and the rest of his men he put in charge of Abishai, his brother, and they were arrayed against the Ammonites. And this is the key right here. Verse 12. And he said, if the Syrians are too strong for me, then you shall help me. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, then I will help you. Be strong and let us use our strength for our people and for the cities of our God. And may the Lord do what seems good to him. So Joab and the people who were with him drew near before the Syrians for battle, and they fled before him. And when the Ammonites saw that the Syrians fled, they likewise fled before Abishai, Joab's brother, and into the city. Then Joab came to Jerusalem. As you see, Joab and his brother, they said, look, if you can't handle it, we're going to go help you. But if I can't handle it, I need you to come help me. So they were there to fight for each other. And every single one of us as Christians, when someone else is struggling, they have to know that they can call on us, and we can pray for them, and we can encourage them, we can help take care of them. Because we're in this battle together. It's not just different battles we're fighting. Obviously, we have different things going on. But essentially, we're all in this together. We all have to care for one another. We all have to look out for one another. And we have to lift each other up. I know I've needed it so many times. My favorite thing is to call Sophia, and I don't even know she's having a bad week, and just trying to make her laugh. But I also have Philip, who's my best male friend, that I can go and talk to at any time. That he can talk to me about anything at any time. And I know it's not going to be like a foolish thing. I know I can trust him. I know I can count on him. But these men, it was a little number of men compared to who were coming against them. But these people fled from them when they saw the unity. These people were scared of them. Because this is how mighty God made these people. And God can do that with every single one of us. He can make us a mighty Christian. He can make us a mighty man or woman of prayer, of faith. He can make every single one of us. There's no one that's left out. There's no one that's less. There's no one that can't attain to that. It's the people who want it. You just have you have to have the heart that says, God, help me.
Amen.
Because there's so many times, I've talked to Shelly about this, there's so many times I'm like, God, I read all these stories of these great men of faith, of everything I did for you. I just feel like I'm never going to get there. I feel like I'm never going to do that. And that's not a thought from God. That's not something God says you can't attain to. This is a thought from the devil. It's thought just of self-condemnation. We have to have the heart of saying, God, I'm in total submission. You just do whatever it is that you want to do in my life. And Joab saw that they were trapped, but they were experienced men. They were experienced men in battle. They were experienced men in war. And they had seen the hand of God move so many times, and I'm sure they had little doubt about what was going to happen. But they looked out for one another. And the one thing that I love was, where is it at? Give me a second. May the Lord do what seems good to him. I know they were confident they were going to win. I know they were confident they were going to get success, but they said, whatever happens, even if we do die, we're out here defending our God. We're out here doing what God's called us to do. We're out here doing what our King has called us to do. But they loved one another. They cared for one another. And that's the way the body of Christ needs to be with one another. I know that's the way, I love that about Shelly and I, is that we can count on one another when we're struggling with something and talk to each other about something. It's not just her coming to me. A lot of times I have to go to her and like, I'm struggling with this, and it just comes out. And there's a lot of times we sit there and we have to encourage each other because we need it. A few weeks ago, I had a close friend call me from a different state about something he was struggling with and ask for prayer. And it's not something you just go and tell a lot of people. It was something that's really embarrassing and something like that, but I would have never known. Nobody would have ever known unless they told someone. Unless he came out and searched for it. Amen. And last week I was having a really rough day, and I reached out to some brothers and asked them for prayer, and they both encouraged me and prayed for me. And I felt so much better because I reached out for them. We won't always know when each other's struggling. And like the old saying goes, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. We can't throw ourselves a pity party. We can't throw ourselves a pity party and pretend no one cares for us if they don't know what's going on with us. We have to communicate with one another. We can't just expect people to know what's going on with us. Because we all have our own different lives. We all have different things going on. If we want each other to know, we have to communicate with one another and be willing to open up with someone else. I can sit there and throw myself a pity party all stinking day. And if no one knows, it's my own fault because I never told anyone. We are here to fight and care for one another. And we can't forsake each other because that's when we're going to fall. That's when our friendships, our church will break apart. I mean, look at this country. We're all fighting, not everyone's fighting against each other, but you see all the things that are on the media, all the things that are in the news, it's just, you feel this country just imploding from within. Because we all care about ourselves. We all care about what we want, what we think is right. And we don't want to fight with one another. I mean, but you see the things in Texas, when things go wrong, people are out there looking for one another, out caring for each other. That's the way we should be all the time. In conclusion, I want to say no one, like I've said over and over, but it's something that has to be nailed into our minds because we're so quick to forget it. No one's excluded from being mighty with God. No one's excluded from being close to God. No one's excluded to having an amazing Christian experience. It is attainable for every person. It doesn't matter what your past has been. It doesn't matter what you're doing now. It's never too late, in a sense, for God to give you a new beginning. As Carrie has always told me, we can have as much of God as we want. But if we ignore God, we're going to lose out. If you're content with living a basic Western Christian life for Jesus, you will never experience all that God has for you.
Amen.
And you will be disappointed at the end of your life. Mm-hmm. When David died, they described it in 1 Chronicles 29. It says, "Thus David, the son of Jesse, reigned over all Israel. The time that he reigned over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron and 33 years in Jerusalem. Then he died at a good age, full of days, riches and honor, and Solomon his son reigned in his place." And if you go back to when Abraham died as well, in Genesis 25 verse 8, it says, "Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people." When I die, I want to be full of years. I want to be full of life. I want to be full of God. I don't want to be someone that sits at home all day. I don't want to be someone whose life is about, I did this so I could attain this, so I could do this and accomplish this. I don't want my life to be remembered like that. I want my life to be remembered what I did for God. I want my life to be remembered because I served God. A lot of times I'll go through, I don't know why I like to do this, but a lot of times I'll go through different newspapers and go through their obituaries. And I love when I read them and I realize that they said they love their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. They were so excited about being able to go with Him. And I know they're at peace now. That's something that just warms my heart so much. Because they knew what was coming, mm-hmm. and they loved God and they served God. Mm-hmm. I want to be remembered for serving God. Amen. I want to be remembered for loving God. And every single one of us can attain to that. Every single one of us can live that life that God wants us to live. And that He's called us to live. It's not just a select few. So if you're struggling today, it's what God wants you to know, that you too can be a mighty Christian.
That's right.
You too can be a prayerful Christian. You too can be a loving Christian. Amen. And the Christian that God has called us to be, all of us to be. And I know a lot of us can go through that time in our life because things go wrong. We make mistakes, we sin, we do stupid things at times, and I know a lot of times I really struggle, and I'm like, God, am I going to completely miss out on what you have for me? But then there He is with His grace saying, no, you can have all that you want. Amen. So I'm going to pray for you guys, and then I'll let Steve take over. Jesus, I just thank you, God, so much for your mercy, God. Lord, I thank you just all throughout Scripture, Lord. It doesn't matter where, we can find examples of godly men God, we can correlate things with our spiritual life all through Scripture, God. Lord, you give us so many examples. You give us so much hope, God, and you give us new mercies every day, God. Lord, every single day is a new day, Lord, and it's a new day to in a sense, start over. God, just get back on track with what we missed out on, God.
Jesus.
God, I pray for your mercy just to allow us to follow you wholeheartedly, God. God, I pray that you would do things in our life to make us fall less in love with the world and more in love with you, God. God, I pray that we would see the emptiness of what the world has to offer, God. God, I pray that we don't spend our lives building up things for ourselves and building our own kingdom, building our own riches, and building our own inventory of things, God, but we spend our life building your kingdom, God.
Amen.
Lord, you are aware of all that we have need of. You're aware of all our bills, all our troubles, the food, clothes. You're aware of all of that, God, and you promise that you will provide.
Amen.
But you say you'll provide us when we just seek your kingdom first. God, so let our hearts be set on seeking your kingdom. Let our hearts be set on seeking you and serving you in every single thing, God. Lord, and that's when things come together in our lives, God. That's when you help us, Father God. Not say everyone's going to die full of riches like David, but Lord, we'll die having everything we've ever needed. God, this life is so temporary. It's so short, God.
Amen.
Lord, let us live for something that lasts for eternity, God. Let the things we do in this life outlive us, God.
Amen.
Let us all be remembered by people that serve God. Mighty Christians, God, like these men that David had. God, we pray that we would have such a walk with you that you would trust us with anything, God. That it wouldn't even be questioned. That you just say, okay, go do this. This is a little thing. I trust you completely with this. But Lord, you trust us because our dependence is on you. God, let us serve you. Let us love you the way these men served David.
Yes.
God, when we hear the desires of your heart, let us go after that. God, have mercy on us, God. Have mercy on your people, Father. I pray that you would raise up the church, God. One last time, God. One last time. And this time, God, in our countries and our cities, God, I just pray that you raise your people up to gather together, to fight together, to look out for one another, God.
Yes.
Lord, the people that just find it so hard to talk to other people about what's going on, I pray, Lord, that you would help them with that. God, I pray that you give us wisdom in talking to people
Yes.
and praying for people, God. Lord, you can do whatever it is. And I just pray, God, that you would make us closer. You would make this family here closer, God.
Yes.
Lord, that we would always love one another.
Yes.
God, even in the times we may offend one another, cause offenses, God, I pray that we would always love one another.
Yes.
Because that always covers the multitude of sins, God. Lord, I just pray for our bond to one another. Grow closer, God. Grow stronger, God. Grow thicker, God. And no one can cut it, Father God. Let us not leave anyone behind. But walk with one another, arm in arm, God.
Yes.
God, we love you. We thank you for your grace, God. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you that you can do whatever it is you want to do with us, God. And that none of us are left behind.
Amen.
God, that none of us are cast off to the side. And I thank you, Lord, that you leave yourself open to have as much as we want, God. Just pray, Lord, that you bless the rest of this day. God, I pray that you just keep this word in our mind. Father, just to remember, God, what's available for us. God, we love you. Let us see warfare like this in the spiritual, God. Let us see victory like this in our spiritual lives, God, in this country, God.
Amen.
In a spiritual sense, God.
Yes, Lord.
God, it's happened before. It can happen again.
Amen.
God, it can always happen again. So, Lord, give us the ability to depend completely on you, God.
Amen.
And to be fearless. God, to be unashamed. And God, to be willing to do whatever it takes, God.
Amen.
I love you, Jesus. I thank you so much for the family you've given us here, God. I thank you for the lives you have given us, God. And Lord, most of all, I thank you for putting us on this earth for a time such as this. Let your name be glorified, God, at the end of our days. Let us all finish well, God. We love you and praise in Jesus' name.